G'day guys, ZiggyD here and welcome back to another look at Escape from Tarkov. In this video I want to show you guys some of the game mechanics around weapon crafting and modification. So in this game, crafting is not the case where you'll punch down trees and harvest wood and mine up ore and then smelt it into a gun. In this game you'll find actual weapon pieces and base sections of guns and then build them out from there, and you can pull apart guns and put the parts on other guns and so on and so forth. So in this game I'll take you guys through building a Kalashnikov AK-74UB and also show you guys some of the modification you can do from that and some of the differences in mods. So over here on the right hand side, this is my character's kind of like out of game inventory. I have some collection of things that we can use on this AK-74UB just here. So this is not everything. There are a lot of mods in this game, and just scrolling up you can see like all of these blue sections here, all these blue ones are all mods that I've found for different weapons and multiple ones for the same weapon. So there are more mods available for like a Kalashnikov rifle like this that you can find, and some are better than others, some are different than others and serve different purposes. Some will even have extra attachment spots on them so that you can add extra modifications, for example. So let's first start off with the basics. Firstly, you need a weapon to be operable. You need the bare minimum for it to be operable. Currently you have the base section of the Kalashnikov, but we can't use this right now. You can see this is red and it's simply unusable. You could not take this thing into a firefight and actually have it function. The bare minimum is a handle. So we can go and simply drag a handle onto there, or we can drag it into this menu section over here. Or alternatively, what you can do is you can right click and go to modding, and you can actually select from the drop down and select any of your grips that you have in your inventories that are applicable. So the base minimum that we need is firstly a grip, an actual handle there, and then we'll also need one of these 4 grips here as well. So we got this hand guard just here. So now that is the bare minimum for it to operate. We can now hold the gun and fire it. So, well, technically, not really, because there's another component that we need. We obviously need bullets to fire. So we need a magazine, and we'll also need rounds in that magazine, and these are separate things. So you can see I have 2 magazines here, and one is a larger capacity than the other, but these have other impacts that I'll get into in a moment. And I also have 2 different types of rounds that are both compatible within this magazine and in this rifle just here. So let's take a look at these rounds. We'll inspect both of these guys here, and you can actually see the power and advantages of each different type of round. So first up we have the cheaper and more widely available US variant of the round, which is a reduced speed bullet cartridge, and this is useful against unarmored targets essentially. And you can see the bullet speed there is 303 meters per second, and that is that is the velocity, which is one of the primary determiners of how much damage a round is actually going to do as well. Here we have an armor piercing round, so this will be useful against targets that are wearing lots of armor, and it has a velocity of 890 meters per second. It's much faster, so much more useful against those heavily armored targets. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the US rounds and I'll drag it into this magazine over here, and that'll load that up with 30 rounds. And you'll see that this magazine has an effect on ergonomics. Now, adding a magazine to a weapon makes it a little bit more bulky, and obviously you need some form of magazine, so we can go ahead and add this one. And that had a -3 ergonomics effect. Now the gun is fully functional. It's not great, because this is the bare minimum of what you need to actually use it. It's not great, but it's at least functional. So you'll notice that other magazine had -3 ergonomics. So here's an alternative magazine that has -6 ergonomics, so it's bulkier, and that's because this actually is like a double capacity magazine, and as a result it's heavier and larger, and it makes wielding the weapon a little more awkward and a little more cumbersome. So although you can carry a larger magazine and those extra rounds could come in handy in extended firefights where you don't have to reload, you do have to pay for it in terms of the ergonomics of the weapon. So there is a drawback to that. So we can choose that depending on how we want to use the weapon in what sort of engagements and what sort of situations. So this kind of like comparison of different parts extends to all of the base components and the modifications that you can do to a weapon. Most things will have some advantage but might have a drawback to ergonomics, and then some things are just straight up better. So for example, this grip over here compared to this grip, well, this is a very basic, standard manufactured wooden grip right here, and it doesn't really do anything. It makes the gun functional, but so we can actually hold it, but it's not very comfortable. It doesn't really add any benefits. However, we've got this Zenit RK3 AKA pistol grip here, an alternative one that's much more ergonomic. So it increases the ergonomics and reduces the recoil of the weapon. So this is simply an example of an upgraded component of the weapon, something that is just straight up better. So if we found one of those and we were using this thing like this, and this is the gun we were running around with, and we were in a raid and we found the RK3 piece just here, well then we could simply swap that out and gain some advantages in terms of the weapon's performance. So we have a functional gun, but at the moment it kicks like a mule because, well, it's got a shit ton of recoil right now. The only thing we've done to help enhance the recoil is have a slightly more comfortable hand grip here, but that's not going to help us that much against the massive recoil of a AK-74 like this. So what we can do is add an actual weapon stock just here. So we can add this guy here, we'll drag that onto the actual weapon, and you can see that reduces the recoil right down. So you can see all the stats for the weapon here, and you can see this is the base recoil of the weapon, and this is where we've reduced it to. So this part here makes a huge difference on the amount of recoil. You can see minus 40 recoil and plus 5 ergonomics. So this makes the weapon much more comfortable. Now this is a pretty simple stock for this weapon right here. It's just a plain metal one, right? Just allows you to jut your weapon up against your shoulder, making it much more comfortable and much easier to control. However, you can get better pieces than this. You can get like full wooden ones, or you could get plastic lighter ones that might be more ergonomic. So you can certainly get upgrades in that. This is the only one that I have available at the moment, and it's the one that I'll go with to make this weapon at least have a lot less recoil. Like, I would consider this to be an essential component for a weapon, although you could theoretically use it without. You're gonna have a shit ton of recoil to deal with. So we've got the bare minimum of handguard here on the weapon in order for it to be functional. If we take that off, it becomes unfunctional, and we can't really hold onto the barrel because our hand will burn. But we want to go further than this. We want to enhance this further. So what I'm going to use is this AK-74U handguard here, and you can see that this has some improvements in terms of ergonomics over the base. So this is straight up better. It lowers the recoil and improves the ergonomics by a decent amount, so that's quite handy. But you'll also notice that it has some tactical rails on it as well. It's got some mounting points on either side and on the bottom, which means that not only does it improve the stats of it, and even if it didn't improve the stats, it'd be worth considering this piece, because sometimes there'll be pieces that are less ergonomic and don't help with recoil, but allow you to attach modifications, and that's precisely what this does just here. So if I go back to this base one for an example here, and go to the modding menu, you'll see that I can't really attach anything like any torches or anything like that. So if I go here, I can't attach any extra grips or any torches or stuff like that. There's just muzzle stuff. I can't really do too much to the weapon in its current state. However, if we go back into the inspection menu here, take this one off and replace it with this B11 piece handguard just here. So not only now has it improved, it's become more ergonomic and it has less recoil, but we can actually go back into that modding menu. And now you'll notice that we have 3 more anchor points for modifications now. We have 1 on each side and 1 on the bottom. So this will allow us to attach a hand grip on the bottom here. So we can actually add one of these. So I think I have some of these guys floating around here. So we have this one just here, which over the base hand grip, full grip that we have right there, this will improve the ergonomics further and also lower the recoil further as well, because it's a better anchoring point for your hand. You can control that recoil better with this. So we can go ahead and add this to it now, either through the modding menu or simply by dragging it on now that it has a potential anchor slot, whereas we couldn't have done that before. Now we can also take that even further and add things like torches and laser sights as well to the side. So we have these side mounting points now, which if I can find where those lead to, just here. We can add a laser sight onto one side, which will help assist with targeting, and we can add a torch to the other side as well. So if we go over here, we can add a Clash torch, which we can use for dark interiors or for night missions if we so desire. Now these torches and laser sights have pure gameplay improvements, right? Like a torch allows you to see better, and a laser sight allows you to see where you're aiming when you're hip firing a lot more easily. However, they do have some actual weapon performance issues with them, like ergonomics, for example, is lowered by adding a laser light or a torch. Not by a great deal, but by a bit. It makes the end of the weapon clunkier, which makes it a bit more cumbersome to handle and a bit heavier, which means you're lowering this ergonomics, which is this stat is kind of like a catch-all for your accuracy and your recoil and just how well you can handle the weapon overall. So adding these things does come with a drawback. So if you're heading into a mission where you don't actually need a torch, there's no dark interiors, or you're not going out at night, or you don't really plan on using the torch, then you don't have to enable it. Simply putting all the mods you can on one weapon might not be the best idea, because you're going to lower the performance of it if you're making it a lot heavier, for example. So the final thing I'm going to be able to show you here from the mods that I have is also the muzzle as well. So we currently just have the basic stock muzzle and don't have anything added to it. Now we have some options here. I'll bring up the inspect menus for these guys so we can compare them. I have a muzzle device suppressor here, an actual silencer, and then a muzzle brake and compensator. Now this one provides better recoil protection, so it lowers the recoil. We have a silencer, which will make the weapon silent or near silent, so much easier to avoid detection by other players, and that obviously has its own benefits. However, it does lower the accuracy and ergonomics. It does help reduce the recoil further, so having some form of muzzle attachment is going to help lower the recoil, but not as much as the actual muzzle brake, and it does come, again, at that cost of accuracy and ergonomics, because the silencer itself is quite bulky. And then similarly, we have a suppressor here as well that is going to lower the accuracy again and lower the ergonomics, but also lower the recoil. So we have our choice of what we want to take here. So I just want pure handling, so I'm going to add the muzzle brake and compensator to the weapon, and that'll just give us some extra recoil benefits there. Now another non-essential but still nice piece to add is you'll notice we've got this kind of like top rail just here, and some of the weapon is actually exposed. And what we can do is we can add a dust cover to that. Now some dust covers might have extra attachment points. Currently this one does not, so I don't believe that I can mod this in order to, or at least I don't have any compatible scopes to add at the moment. This has its own iron sights on it, which is going to make it a little bit easier for us to aim. There's the iron sights at the end of this piece, which we can use anyway, but it helps with the aiming. But the dust cover prevents weapon issues, and mostly just improves the ergonomics further of the weapon. But you could potentially get dust covers that have extra anchoring points on them to actually add a scope to the weapon, for example. Like you could add a scope or a reflex sight or something like that. Now this weapon is nearly fully modded out. Obviously I can't show you all the mods and all the available things because there's so many in this game, and you actually have to go either buy them from the traders or actually find them in raids, and it's going to take some time to do that. But as you can see, there's a few other things, like you can get mount attachments, which is just something you can attach to your dust cover in order to mount other things on top of it. So I don't have one of those currently, so I can't show you guys mounting any reflex sights or scopes on that, but you can actually add those things to the weapon and continue to mod it out in that way. And there's also a charge modification as well, which we don't have currently. So there you guys have it. We built up from scratch what I think is a pretty nice looking gun from pure components, adding mods on top of it and customizing it to our liking. What I quite like about this system, and I find pretty interesting about Escape from Tarkov, is that this is going to be happening constantly. You might find a section of a gun in one raid and then build it up and take it into the next raid, and if you survive you might find some more mods to improve it or some better components to replace, and maybe you build several guns at the same time and eventually end up with a really nice modded gun, and then someone kills you and takes it. And then on the flip side, maybe you kill someone else and take their nicely modded gun too. That's pretty interesting. Anyway, if you guys have any questions, please ask them in the comments below. That's it for now. I'm ZiggyD, and thanks for watching.